Oh, okay. I thought I was live already. I'm study talking to you all, and no one heard what I'm saying. So, all right. Welcome to another episode of Real Morse Talk. Well, we're here to talk about the issues around more science, and we're talking about property nobility, not just issues, but general overall, talking about property nobility and more science and our legacy and history and all kinds of things that go along with it. But the most important thing is the man behind it, the myth, the legend, the prophet that no one wants to talk about. That's what Real Morris is talking about, Prophet Noble Drawley. I am your hostess. I am Prime Minister, National Grand Sheikh the Red Bay. And we're having trouble streaming. Your destination is possible. The stream was ended or deleted. This can also occur. All right, so it looks like that we're not streaming live. Is saying that we're having trouble streaming your destination. I'm gonna have to get someone to be able to tell me whether we're streaming or not on your platform. I just got a sign up saying that they're having trouble streaming the destination of the show where it's supposed to be streaming at. There's an alert sign up here and it says live viewer. Okay, so it's saying that its destination is having trouble streaming, but someone said we see you. Okay, thank you, Shukran, for that. So we see you because it just told me that I was not streaming. And with this technology and everything, we just really do not know. So, but anyway, I wanted to welcome everybody to Real More Talk. But I'm excited about today because guess what? We are streaming and it's Ramadan. And so I'm excited because I've been practicing Ramadan I guess practically all my life. I've been practicing Ramadan since like age 7. And so, when you're able to start being able to practice it, Ramadan, I remember my mother, if you want to be hungry, you go ahead and be hungry and all those types of things. She used to say that to me when I was younger because I definitely wanted to be fast. And, I was one of those children that I wanted to do everything, that the adults were doing. So if fasting was done, I wanted to fast. If prayer was being done, I wanted to pray. If they were talking and I'm listening, I wanted to learn. So I'm just one of those children. So, and I'm grateful for my inquisitivity because now I think it's helped me with my life so far now. So, but I do want to say Ramadan Mubarak. Ramadan Kareem to everyone who is fasting. And for those who are not fasting or may not feel like that you're at that where you can fast at this time, maybe one day you will. Or maybe you're elder now and you cannot fast. And it does tell you when you get older if you are having some type of health issues or troubles and fasting, then it's all right. And listen, fasting is something that all Muslims do universally. So it's not because if I practice more science, I do not fast because I'm practicing more science. None of that. Islam itself is universal. We have to get that in our heads. Islam is universal. And so prayer, Allah, the God that we serve, the prophets that we serve, all of it's universal. So it's not this Muslim, that Muslim, you're Muslim, this Muslim, and all of these separations that we do to ourselves because we should be able to talk to one another, be with one another, support one another, and learn about the different cultures. Now, when it comes to culture, then yes, we do have different cultures depending on where you were born, the landmass you live in, where you were born, what family you were raised in, how your family raised you. Of course, then there's cultural differences. But Islam itself is universal, and our God that we serve is universal. No matter what name you call him by, call Allah by. I don't use the masculine version because we know that Allah is not a masculine deity. Some will argue with that he is, but anything with and all of those are feminine energies, not masculine. And man can't reproduce himself. Only reproduction can come through mothers. So that's another topic for another time here at Real Morse Talk. But anyway, I'm excited today because we're talking about a lot of things that have come with Prophet Noble Drawley. And it's a lot of information that I would like to share with you all in reference to the information that we're sharing tonight. I did put the program out on some of the things that we are sharing tonight. And I do want to come from several books you'll see me come from tonight. I'm going to be coming from the Moorish literature. All these are found at circle7publishing.com. I'm going to be coming from the Moorish literature today. I'm going to be coming from the origins and pearls of modern education today, a book that was done by me and the Grand Sheikh Tariq Bey. And I'm also going to be coming from the book that I wrote, Who Are the Moors? So these are some of the books that we're coming from today. And you can purchase these booklets on the Circle 7 website, circle7publishing.com. And I believe this one's $7 and these two are probably $10 or maybe $20, something like that. But you have to go to the website and see the books there. So I want to jump right into it, because one of the things we talked about the prior week was something that when the question was asked, what shall we call them? And so, and you'll find that right here in the Moorish literature, what shall we call them? And so I'm going to come from there today. What shall we call him? And it's right there in the front of that page. And so I'm going to be coming from that today, because I want to talk about this, and I want to break down what the prophet is saying about this information here and who actually did the interviewing, of this particular information. Because, like, again, we're talking about now, we're into the works. We've introduced the prophet Noah Jollies. We know that he was born in the state of North Carolina in 1886. We know that he came to these shores in 1907. We know that he had several organizations before he set up the one that we're most familiar with, which is the Old Canaanite Temple. He started that in 1912 and established it in 1913. And then the Old Canaanite Temple, he left New York. That wasn't right, because Moors are not just Canaanites, they're Moabites and Canaanites. So I need to be able to associate with both. Had some problems in New York and went on to Chicago, went to several cities. As a matter of fact, he went to Philadelphia. He was in Camden, New Jersey, what they call Jerusalem. The old Jerusalem is what they call Camden, New Jersey. He went to Philadelphia, Camden, New Jersey. So those places we know. He went to Chicago and Chicago, Illinois. And the great thing about some of the elders where I grew up at, with some of the elders, that they actually met the prophet. They were with the prophet. They used to talk with the prophet. They used to go to Chicago and visit the prophet. The prophet came visiting, to different territories, but he did not travel much once he got to Chicago. People came more to him. He was more centered there. And these people can tell you all about the prophet, all of these things. And so fortunate for me, I grew up not only from my family, but I had family that my family really approved of, which and more should approve of one another. But then my uncle Ike literally knew the people that the temple that I started going to, because I used to go to Philadelphia temple, go to Philadelphia, meet my uncle. And from my uncle, we would all go to Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, to the temple, which my family had there. But once I was older and, having my own children and just carrying back and forth, I remember with my youngest child, breastfeeding her, going back and forth. And, my uncle said, listen, I know some people there, you can associate with them there and, go to that particular temple. Here, make sure you take your nationality card with you. Let them know that you were born and raised Moorish. I mean, he made sure that I had everything equipped, because I didn't even know that I was going to be interrogated, at this, temple that I went to, asking me all these questions, which every temple doesn't do that, I found out. But they just wanted to know, because they were so surprised, a young sister like me, I was born and raised in Moorish science, and they were just so, and I guess enthralled by it. Like, what? Who is this sister? So, but anyway, so the good thing about it is I met a lot of Moors in Camden, New Jersey. They were with the founder. They were with the reincarnated prophet as well. I met people that actually walk with the prophet, talk with the prophet, was able to share information that the prophet gave. And so those people, I will always, always remember them. Brother Elisha O'Neill, sister, we call her Mother Penny, with the mother, Sister Mary, Sister Eleanor, just a whole lot of Moors that I was very fortunate to be around, those elder Moors. And so I'm always excited about when I'm talking about the prophet. I'm always excited about Moorish science. I'm super excited when it's Ramadan. And I'm a practicer. They say belief is what one thinks perhaps is truth. Faith is when you know the truth. And so I'm in the faith portion of my journey with this whole Moorish science, because I love it, love everything about it. But I do want to share. So my whole podcast is sharing with you, so journey with me, travel with me on my journey. And when I'm talking about more science journey with me, when I'm talking about the prophet, again, take out a piece of paper and pen. I would say get a notebook, like have an actual notebook, like a 3-ring binder, like I have a notebook here, notebook, clipboards, those type things. Take the information down. Some things you may enjoy, some things you may want to look over later. And then again, in this electrified age, you can always go back and look at the video, right? So you can always do that. All right. So I just wanted to say that tonight, and I do apologize that I did not send out the email to everyone about the tonight's call. And so I'm just trusting that people did remember, because I did not send out the email. I do apologize. My day was so full, and then trying to make sure I broke fast in time with Ramadan and things like that, and time just got past me. So, but I do want to go ahead with what shall we call him. I'm going to put on, I have several different glasses that I use. I'm going to put these on. I want to be able to read this to you all. What shall we call him? And so often our various journalists find trouble in selecting the proper name for the Moorish Americans. Some say Negro. Another will brand him race man. So another will call him Afro-American, and then come colored, dark American, Coon, shine, the brethren, and your folks. It is indeed a hard matter to find something suitable for the various occasions where a title needs to be used. Is it that these people have no proper name? Did they have a national name when first sought to these shores in the early part of the 17th century? If so, what was it? Did not the land from which they were forced have a name? It now appears a good idea for those whose duty it is to write for the various journals to find out what the national name of the forefathers of these people was. Also, look into the history of the founders of civilization and see who were and where they stood in the building of present civilization. Probably 2 hours in an up-to-date library, and that was back then, so we can get it much faster now. Two hours in an up-to-date library would serve to relieve the strain of our women and men of letters. When the occasion presents itself for a title for these people, the matter of this various names given to those 22 million people with all the shades of every race of the globe was the act of European psychology. They gave him a name and then defined it as something inferior to theirs. White, they defined as a color of purity. Black, they said, represents everything of evil. The Negro, as they were called in this nation, have no nation to which they might look with pride. Their history starts with the close of the Civil War, or more properly, with his being forced to serve someone else. Thus, he is separated from the illustrious history of his forefathers and foremothers, who were the founders of the first civilization of the old world. This matter should be looked into with a hope of correcting it. And that's what we are doing right here on Real Moorish Talk. We're correcting. That's what's happening. We're correcting that, because there's no way. It's asking, who are these people? What should we call them? There shouldn't be a question of what they should call him. And so one of the things is that you heard me use the terms which they called us. And the amazing thing, I talked about this the prior time I was on this broadcast, on the third broadcast, we're on the fourth now, that all these different names and titles gave to us as a people. You have to ask yourself, why is one people given so many labels, so many terms? What is it about these people that they have to keep being relabeled, rebranded terms? You don't hear any other people in the world that are labeled these brands. Now, at my research today, like I said, because on my book, I just went over some things that I'm, finishing up, trimming up on my book. So, at one time, they tried to use the color system, red, black, yellow, brown, right? I think red, black, yellow, brown. So red was supposed to be for the so-called Indians. The black was supposed to be representing us. The yellow was supposed to be represent anyone from Asian, Chinese, Japanese, any of those people. And then you had the so-called brown that was supposed to be represent our brothers and sisters from Puerto Rico, etc. But the problem with that is because the colors system is set on classification, not on skin complexion, you cannot call people by all of these colors. So it's social status. And so this is what the prophet wanted us to realize, that social status is how we are being identified as Black. Now, in this modern day time, you can go into all of these different, AIs and look up different terms and information and things like that. And even challenge AI when AI tried to come up with ways that you were Black or etc. One of the things that I wind up doing was that, they had on the chat G, whatever that thing is called, they had it where they were trying to say at one time that, Black, that, when Egyptian land, that Nubian meant Black, Kush meant Black, this meant Black. We know all that does not mean Black. Black is a brand new word. And I typed all the information up for you all. It's a brand new word for a old people. So this is a whole problem with us, is that we're an ancient people and they keep giving us modern terms. They're trying to put an ancient people into modern terms. And I've been practicing this word all day, making sure that I got it. And it's called anachronism. And that's what they use, that particular term, for us as a people when they're trying to take old places and put them into something new. Anachronism, that's what it's called. And so I was practicing, I want to make sure I got on here and say it right. I just want to make sure that the word was right. But I know the word in my head, but when I'm bringing it out of my mouth, it may not always sound exactly what it is. And that ism, we know ism, on the bottom of it is the practice of too, like ISH is practice of ism, ISM, like Islam, ism, practice of Islam, Moorish, ISH, ISM. Those are the practices of. And so this whole term that they use it because they try to put an ancient people with modern terms, and it doesn't match, because then when you're trying to look up research, you'll find it clashes. It doesn't match. So they have brand new names for everything from, from Akupta to Kemet down Egypt. They have that name for that particular landmass that they want to call Egypt. They know that Africa was never Africa. It was a brand new name, but yet they still use Africa when they talk about an ancient people. And that doesn't match, because the ancient people are not matched with a modern name. Now, does names change? Does time change? Does things move on? Absolutely. But when you're talking about a people, an ancient people, you have to go back to their roots. You can't take my roots that are ancient and bring them to modern terms and try to match me with a land term that does not match who I am. And so we know that when we're talking about nationality and birthrights, and we're talking about origin of people, that we know that we are not all these things. As you heard me say earlier, the different names that I call them, and I broke them all down for you all, and I'm going to go over the ancient and modern terms for those particular names that they called us. So again, they Afro-American. Now you would laugh and say, this is a pretty old book. So they was calling us Afro-Americans back in that time frame. And you're like, what? We know the Afro was a hairstyle that they gave our hair because it was bushy, and they called it Afro, and that AFR comes from an ancient term from the landmass, right? We know the etymology of words and come from word terms. So they called it Afro-American because they was called it Afro in America. But that was not true either, but that was something they was trying to associate with us. And then they came with the word color. So we know that color, we talked about this week prior, color, people of color, all the same thing, nothing different. And then dark American. That one was really interesting to me when I first saw that, dark American. So they're saying that you're dark in complexion and you're an American. Now, amazing thing still, like I said, in all these terms, you never hear Asiatic. You never hear more, but you hear all these terms. So they just try to find ways to keep classifying us without identifying us correctly because they didn't want to trace us back into our true heritage. So they kept making up things to call us. So they called us dark American Coon, which means uncouth. We had this shine because our skin was radiant and shine and glow. They said we would shine like in the moonlight. The brethren, right? Your brother and your brother, and then the last one, you folks. And a lot of people, old elder people, used to use that term a lot. You folks or whatever, those folks, you folks, color folks, etc. I remember, I think it was Bugs Bunny. I remember that's they showed it. My brother used to love to watch on TV. I think it was Bugs Bunny and say, goodbye, you folks, or something to the end of that whole folks thing. And which really turned me on to the word folks. Like that time, like, who are they talking to when he's talking about folks and things like that? So sometimes things from childhood memory come back to your head because you're thinking about these things that you remember, and like these terms are where they came from. And so none of these terms are national identification terms. And so when we look at information that I did pull up, I didn't get a chance to print it all out. Well, I did the definitions for these terms. So we know that the prophet told us that the word Negro, it was given to the Moors, was given to a river in West Africa by Moors because it contained black water. That's what he said, right? And then we also could look up the term Negro in the second definition, a historical term used from the 18th century, mid 20th century to describe people of African descent, especially in the United States. So you notice that it said in the United States. Then the origin of that word it comes from the origin of that word combines African heritage and American nationality, but which they never gave us a nationality. And we're going to challenge this because I'm just going over what these definitions are supposed to say, and then we're going to talk about them. Okay. And so for the historical content of this word, it was more used in the 1950s to 1970s during the civil rights movement. All right. Modernly today, it's supposed to be that is not really used today, and it's considered derogatory today. So if you call somebody Negro today, it's derogatory. Well, so is the word black because it means the same thing, but we're going to get to that. All right. So then the next definition I went into was the meaning of, so let me go back to so after I went into that, the next one I went into was the word colored. Now remember, the prophet told us that color was anything that was painted, stained, varnished, or dyed. All right. So here, the definition, a racial classification historically used in the United States, again, the United States, to refer to people of African descent and sometimes other non-European populations. So they're saying that they even consider, which would probably be more our brothers and sisters that they mislabeled as Indians, they probably were calling them colored at one time too. Right? And so now the historical use of that word was an era that was used during the color only movement. And you'll see a lot of times when we watch old movies where they'll say coloreds and then whites only. They use the word white for them, right? Never used European, but colors and white. So they separated us and used that term. I should have printed this out so I don't have to keep turning my head from you all. It's also associated with the NAACP. And my big thing is always about the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of what colored people. Why has that never changed? Why, if there's so much pride in this black and African American, that it never changed? Because you can still use those acronyms to update those acronyms, but they didn't do that. And so it's an organization, again, that was not created by us. So the NAACP was not an organization created by us. And so how could it be created for us when it wasn't even created by us? So no one, they say, oh, the Europeans did it to help us out. No, they did it to help themselves. It's nothing to do with us as far as pride with the NAACP, that National Association for the Advancement. If you notice, they never changed the name. Now, they changed us, right, from black to African American, but they never changed the NAACP to meet the same quota that they try to reclassify us again as African American. And we know we just lost Jesse Jackson. My heart goes out to Jesse Jackson's family. You know, he's a pioneer. He did a great work. A lot of the people, you know, that he did things to help for, he still was under the Negro mentality, but he did a lot of work for the people. But he is the one that challenged them, and that's in my book too. Challenged the people on them calling us black. That black was not a national term. It didn't identify people like others, like Italians, Japanese, Chinese, and it still does not. African American does not today. We're going to get into that. But still, in all, he tried to make an even playing field by not calling us black. And a lot of people were angry with him about that. They were so angry because they wanted to be called black. And I still have to say today, if it's so much pride in being black and proud and say it loud, which we know James Brown was paid a lot of fiat to make that song. And in later years, he actually apologized for that. But if it's so much pride in that, why, if I call you a black so-and-so, you ready to take my head off? Because there's no pride in a lie, in something that's false. But let me get into it when I finish these terms for you. So we went into the next term was Afro-American, and that definition terms, the prophet told the Moors that at that time that we were not Afro-Americans at the time. Well, in a definition says a term used primarily during the mid 20th century to describe Americans of African ancestry. How do you notice that all of these terms are to identify the one people? All these terms were used to identify as no other people in the world have had so many classifications to try to identify who they are. All right, the historical content of this particular word appeared in some early journalistic writings and social writings attempting to do alternate racial descriptions. Never became an official or widely standardized classification. So they did not get to make Afro-American stick. It didn't stick. All right. And so then in the modern term, it says that today it's considered vague or imprecise. Okay, the thing to note historically about this word is that the times moved on, so the word changed over time. Okay. And then we're going to go into, so we did that, we did Afro-American, we did Afro-American. Okay, and so we did all those terms. And so as you can see, the most important thing about all those terms is they were used in the uniting of the States of America. Nowhere else classified us by those terms. And again, it's one people with all these misclassifications. All right. So what I did was a timeline for these words. So expansion of the term Negro was in the 1700s to the late 1800s. The peak usage for that word came from 1750 to 1750 to 1960s. So that's the peak usage of that particular word. And then the word colored was used in the late 1800s to the 1960s. And the peak usage for that word was 1820 to 1965. All right. And then the race man word, which race man just meant trying to identify people as a race, that came in the late 1800s and 1930s. So that word came about. And then in the 1940s and 1970s, rise to Afro-American. So that word came up. And the use Afro-American was used more 1950 to 1975. All right. And then in the early mid 1900s, that approximately period from 1900 to 1950, the word dark American was used. All right. So these are terms that were used. And like, if you would like this information, like I said, I have it. It's all in my book. I have to give you the link to pre-order my book. It's all in my book. But I wanted to go over some of these terms because we want to talk about this, because when we're talking about the prophet Noah, you can't talk about him without talking about nationality and birthrights. And so we say every week that on the show, why is not Prophet Noble Drew Ali talked about? And I went over the prior week that he's not in any of the history books except for the ones that we created. History books. And Taj and I started a history book creating, history legacy that we feel like that people should be known of. Like the European put these historical books together where you see none of us in those American history books. There's nothing in American history about us at all, at all. But they choose our leaders in the more modern books that they have created on who they want us to follow. And I have nothing against Martin Luther King. I didn't agree with everything he did. And because of Martin Luther King, we don't have our own business today, because when he wanted to do that whole integration or, merging us together, Asiatics lost their mind. They was like, oh, this Asiatic store is not as good as this store. These people's ice is colder than this ice over here. And all this ridiculous stuff they did. And so they stopped supporting their own people and started supporting European. And it was done by design to make us close down and have our stores closed down, things like that closed. And so that's what happened. So we lost a lot as people at that particular time. But they want us to also, Frederick Douglass, they want us to, celebrate Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, I'm not saying none of these Asiatics did not do good work. Don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is when you don't marry your own and you decide to marry someone else too, you married an Asiatic woman the first time, then she helped you get where you needed to be. And then when she passed on, instead of going to another sister, you married a European woman. How can you fight for me, my rights, and know what's going on with me, what's going on with our people, and have a European who's not there to support it? And a lot of our people mentality and that mindset of the European is God, blonde hair, blue eye type people, that they're better or whatever. And this is what we did with that whole mindset, not knowing that everything on earth was created coming from you. Nothing else could exist on earth if it was not for you. Now they say everybody has melanin in them. Everybody has melanin in them. We're more deeply melanated, but everybody has melanin in them. But the melanin in them comes from our creation. That's where that melanin comes from. Our melanin creating those forms is where they get the melanin from. Very limited amount of melanin, because we are the ones that are melanated, and we are the human race. We have few. We don't have a recessive gene. Now, some of us are born with recessive gene, and that's into albinoism and things like that. Still, when our people are born into those skin disorders, they still look like Asiatics, because we have our character, our eyes, our nose, our lips, our voice. A lot of us try to change the way our voice sounds because you want to sound more Europeanish. Because, when people hear our voice on the telephone right away, they know who we are. Your name could be as European as Elizabeth Marie Montgomery or whatever. But the bottom line is that your voice is going to say something different when it comes through that throat, right? So the thing is that they know who you are when you first speak out. So trying to hide yourself or identify yourself under someone else. Let me share this. I just have so many different stories, but let me just share this. It was a friend of my children's friend. She had a good amount of children, and they, her children had pretty decent names. But when she had a son, she decided to name him Albert. And I have to laugh when I think about this. So we all was at the park, and we went to celebrate her new birth for her child. And I was excited because, in this era time, we name our children, names that we can associate with. Now, a lot of times we still have those slave last names, which we're working on getting rid of. But we still, a lot of us do, ever since they saw Roots, they tried to name their children, a name that associates with our culture. And so I was so surprised when she said the name. So I said, why did you name your son that? And she said, I wanted to give him a chance at life. If I gave him a name like Abdul or Hassan or something like that, they'll know who he is right away, and he won't have a chance. I said, darling, when your son's demeanor, open up his mouth, being raised by Asiatic mother, Asiatic father, being just raised in that social surrounding, they already going to know who he is. So try to give him a name to try to hide his identity. So you think you're giving him a chance. And she must be about my daughter's age. So I want to say she's 40, 41. So literally in that mind frame, and this was about maybe, I guess her son, oh my goodness, about 20 years ago. So he's a grown man now. But the thing is that for her to have that mindset, and so you figure she must have been like 21, 22 at the time. And that was her mindset, that she wanted to give her son a, now her daughter had a beautiful name that was, you could be Asiatic, or some Europeans name their children that too, but they had beautiful names. I think it was like Brianna or something like that. But they're not names that associate directly with Europeans, because a lot of Europeans now name their children after us. I met Europeans as names that are Keisha, Samara, they're naming their children after some, some of us, Sade, all kinds of names. They're using our names to name their children because they like the names of the children. Or some of them have had children with Asiatic men, and so they decide to, name their children that, especially the ones that have Keisha and all that on there. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you with that. So somehow we as a people keep trying to hide who we are. And, we want to assimilate into another culture of another people. So we want to assimilate and become them, act like them, become them, be a part of them. And at the same time, you're trying to assimilate yourself into being part of them. They are striving to take your identity from you. So they want to identify as you, and you want to identify as them. It's called trading places. So something I never desired to do was assimilate into European culture ever. And always been very, very proud of who I am. And, sometimes people say, oh, that can cost you a job. It can cost you. I've been up and down that road where it's, cost me a job. I never forget having when I was very, very young, I had this position at a Jewish geriatric home. I'll never forget it. Young nurse, Jewish geriatric home. I had my turban on, and I used to wear all white and wear my turban on. And the old women used to, oh, that looks so pretty. Oh, that's so beautiful. They want to touch you and all that. And not, no. And one day, one elder European woman got really angry with me because she wanted me to take my turban off my head and wrap it on her head. And she got angry because I didn't do it. Like, she was literally like acting like I was supposed to stop what I was doing and just take my headdress off and put it on her head. She said, because it'll look better on me. And I was like, I don't think so. But if you would like for me to wrap your turban for you, if you have one in your room, I'll be more than glad to wrap that for you. But I certainly am not going to take my headdress off and wrap your head with it. I most certainly am not. And so, of course, make a long story short, I got into a lot of trouble. Some of the things I said out of my mouth at that age, you don't want to know. But I wind up leaving. They was like, give me the option, did I want to resign, from that position or write an apology letter to her. Those were my options. So you know what I did. I left. I didn't write no apology letter. I'll leave and go on to somewhere else. And I was hired in less than 24 hours. But I'm just saying, a lot of things, you can go back in the mind of different things that happen and the pride of being who you are. So even as a young sister, I wanted to have pride in who I was. And everybody didn't agree with me all the time. I had a lot of fights coming up with family members, some friends, different ones who were not on my father's side of the family, because my father's side of the family did not fight me. They embraced me. Others wanted to fight me. But the bottom line was that I stood for who I wanted to be, and I stood for it. And listen, I didn't know as much then as I do now. I know a lot more now. And the prophet said, when you do better, you know more, you do more. When you do know better, you act better, you do better things. And so I have become a much better individual in my elder years, because my temperament is a lot slower than it was. Back then I was very short circuit. I snap off and snap, crackle, and pop on you in a minute. Back then, about my headdress, about me being Moorish and all of that, just growing pains. But now when someone tries to challenge that about me, I'm more confident and serene in who I am. And these are all the teachings of the Prophet Noble Jolly, because, in the Circle 7 Quran, he gives us lessons. And, and one of my favorite chapters that I go by is the chapter on unity. That's chapter 26. And I love that chapter because, it asks us a few questions in chapter 26. So it asks you in the question, have he endowed thee with wisdom? Have he enlightened thy mind with the knowledge of truth? Communicate it to the ignorant for their instruction. Communicate it to the wise for thy own improvement. True wisdom is less presuming than folly. The wise man doubteth often and changeth his mind, but the fool is obstinate. He doubteth not. He knoweth all things but his own ignorance. The pride of emptiness is an abomination, and to talk much is the foolishness of folly. Nevertheless, it is the part of wisdom to hear with patience their impertinence, and to pity their absurdity. Yet, be not puffed up in thy own conceit, neither boast of superior understanding. The clearest human knowledge is but blindness and folly. And for me, that has walked through me all my life. So I have to ask myself, when I find information out or when I'm checking out information, I have to ask myself those questions. Have he endowed thee with wisdom? Have he enlightened thy mind with the knowledge of truth? I have to ask myself. And then if I answer myself, then I have to say, where do? I parted to what? The ignorance for their instruction. And I parted to the wise too, for what their own improvement. So there's no such thing as someone is so wise or full of wisdom that I can't impart some understanding to them. Because the gifts of understanding are the treasures of Allah. And He points to Allah points to everyone their portion and what measure seemeth good unto themselves. Everyone has their portion of understanding. I have mine, you have yours. And so what I'm on this podcast talking to you all about is my portion of understanding about the prophet, about the movement, where I think things should go and where they are going, right here on Real Moorish Talk. All right. And so Moorish, today, last week the chat wasn't working. So people had emailed me and said we were trying to ask questions, but the chat, we had some technical difficulties. And my good friend Madudi, I probably spoke about him prior week, but I got to talk to him on the phone. It was he said, those boys playing with their toys. He always said that. And what's interesting to me is because I miss, Sheikh Kareem Muhammad Bey so badly. He used to say the same thing when he be talking to me on the phone and it would click off, or we would hear some kind of noise in the background. We were talking. He would say the same exact thing as Madudi. So it get my heart good to hear him say that, because it reminds me so much of Defense Minister Sheikh Kareem Muhammad Bey. He would say that all the time. That's some boys playing with their toys, so they like to interrupt us and things like that. But when things like that happen, that should let us know to get our own. The prophet said there's no better. We have to have economic security amongst our people. Everybody needs economic security. We're going to go over that. I have that on the list for next week's broadcast, when we're talking about the things that the prophet put in place to make sure that we were economically secure. There's things that was put into place. Well, do we follow the things that he put into place? Most of us do not follow the things that he put into place, but he did put them in place for us to make sure that we will always be, recognized, that we will always be able to take care of one another. These are the things that the prophet did. So circling back to the prophet and the movement. So I was talking to an elder brother. He was saying that he does not remember the organization being a civic organization. So I wanted to go back there for a moment, because I think a lot of times people don't know what civics are. And so they, think it's not what the prophet taught. But the civics is teaching you about people, about you, about citizenship, about how citizenship, civics is your name or appellation, nationality, and your birthrights. And the prophet taught that. That is exactly what he taught. He taught us that we have a name. And he wanted us to make sure we knew what it was. So he made sure that he broke down Bay, Ali, and Il. And he did. And he broke down those terms, and he told us who the Bays were, and he broke it down, who we were historically. And I spoke about this on the very first podcast, the soft opening. He talked about the Ils, the Ils, who they're the lawmakers, the Bays, the warriors, Ali, the royal ranking. And so, then other people started coming up with Day, and Al is still Il. It's in the Arabic translation of saying, like, if you say Kareem Muhammad Il, you can say Kareem Muhammad Al. And usually the Al is put on in the beginning of the appellation, and then El will be put on the end of the appellation for one who has made Hajj. So you'll have El and you'll have Al. You can use either one in synopsis one another. You can use both of those together and you can still do that. So those were the ones. And so that was citizenship. When the prophet said, "Come all ye aged of American, hear the truth about your nationality and birthrights," that's citizenship. When he said to set up schools, that is citizenship. When he set up different organizations like the I believe it was under, I think one of them was under the reincarnated prophet and one's under the prophet, but the Sisters Auxiliary, whether it was done under the founder or the reincarnated, the Sisters Auxiliary is a civic organization. The Young Man's League is a civic organization. All those organizations are civic because they're teaching you about nationality and citizenship. So when you're saying that the prophet, well, he did teach also about constitutional law, was more taught under the reincarnated prophet. He also taught about constitutional law in the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence, yes. 1776. I have to remember some of those documents. I have to keep in my head to remember those documents. So the prophet talked about citizenship. So I do apologize to that brother that he felt like he didn't get the civic side of the organization. And one of the main reasons the prophet corrected and changed the organization from the Moorish Temple of Science to the Moorish Science Temple of America, because now they made it the national and divine movement. So you had your civic organization along with your religious component. So that way you had both. And so I'm trust the brothers listening today, because I did tell him that I would be on today. And I spoke with him, in depth about it, but I'm trusting that he's on here today because he really was concerned that he didn't really know who he was, or the information didn't fit, because he felt like he wasn't taught everything. And so any organization that you're in, any group of organization that you're in, you must know about the organization that you're in order to reference to it. So if I want to tell you about an organization, but I'm just talking to you about it, but I'm not able to tell you anything about the organization or what it teaches or does, why would I bring you into that organization? There would make no sense for me to do that if I can't teach you something about the organization. So I may tell you about it and then say, now, if you want more in-depth information, then, follow me to the meeting. And that's how, when I was brought up, when I was a young sister, we were required to bring 3 people into the temple with you, 3 people in. And they didn't say back later on, they gave you a time frame. Excuse me. Iced tea, Ramadan, iced tea, herbal iced tea. Mm-hmm. So they gave you, I think some people are saying it's a year now, but when I was coming up, I don't remember having a year, but I might have. But over the years, I have brought several individuals into the temple, but not without first telling them about the prophet, always, and what the organization represented. And the thing I found most about most people was not being able to identify themselves, and this is back on my time, that they were not Black. Now, I remember an old associate of mine, I called him an old boyfriend, it was years ago, but I remember him and I having this argument about that argument. It was actually an argument. It was not more of a debate, maybe, that back in the day, before our time, his time and my time, if a person called you Black, they would cut your throat. Like literally, they would go off on that term Black, because they knew Black didn't mean anything that was good. They turned that whole thing around. Now we're supposed to believe it's something good. But I remember his mother saying, well, she liked the word color better, because the word color, didn't can associate with anybody. And I said, but the problem with that term is this. They call the people that call themselves white, they don't identify as color. People that call themselves red or whatever it's supposed to, they don't identify themselves as color. People that call themselves yellow, and these people never call themselves these things. That's the thing. The so-called mislabeled American Indian, mislabeled for sure, never called themselves red. It's offensive. The so-called Chinese, Japanese, Asians, anyone from over those Eastern, never called themselves yellow. And that's insultive. Did not these people also have a name? So the European went around and relabeled, rebrand everybody and called themselves white. They didn't call themselves pink. They called themselves white. And again, because we're talking about social classification, social status, they consider white means anything that's good. And so what I did was some research on the different reasons why yellow, red, brown were not really used during those times when they tried to call us these colors and when they tried to associate this on a scientific experiment. So I want to go into that, what I actually typed up. Well, I do want to share this with you all. So let me share this because I did type this up to share with today. So let me get this out of the way because I spoke about Jesse Jackson. Again, I don't even like to use the word sympathy, but my thoughts and vibrations go out to the family of Jesse Jackson. He passed at the age of 84 years old. Jesse Jackson did a lot of work for the Asiatic people. He did a lot of work, even went overseas and did work for the people. So he had his time where he had what his work was to do. He did his work while he was here on this earth. So he could be very proud of the work that he did while he was still here in this physical flesh. So what I did was I looked up information that says about Jesse Jackson and starting Jesse Jackson popularizing the term African American. So I want to share this with you all. Reverend Jesse Jackson did play a major role in popularizing the term African American. It is important to know historically and academic debate about nationality, ethnicity, and identity terminology. And so Jesse Jackson in December of 1988 converted a meeting in Chicago with he convened a meeting in Chicago with political, culture, and community leaders to discuss identifying terminologies used in the United States. Again, United States. I want y'all to keep putting that down, right in your notebooks. Jackson's argument was Jackson publicly advocated replacing older racial terms with African American, stating that Americans of African descent should be identified similar to the ethnic national groups such as. Now tell me that he didn't know the prophet's work. Let me know if this sounds familiar with you all. This is why I wanted to share it. With Italian Americans, Irish Americans, Greek Americans, Jewish Americans. His reason was that identity should reflect historical origin. Cultural heritage should be acknowledged and naming should move away from color-based classifications. After this announcement, major media outlets adopted the term. Universities and government institutions followed. The phrase entered widespread national usage during the late 1980s and 1990s. Okay, so I really wanted to bring that point up because in this same literature, in the Moorish historical message to America, right, the prophet talked about the same thing, right? And I mentioned it the week prior. So when people act like that our literature is not studied, that our prophet was not studied, they may not be giving honor to our prophet, but they're certainly using information that the prophet used. So I wanted to go over some of this to see if it sounds familiar to all. Those who have more literature, you can certainly follow along with me. If you don't have one, you should get one. Okay, if you don't have one, you should get one. Go to circle7publishing.com and order one. But I wanted to go. Is it more students to go back to America? Let me see. I believe that's where it is. So I'm going to go into where the prophet talks about it at. So let's see. Here we go. Let me just find out. I should have highlighted it. Let me see. Let me see. It might be. Oh, you know what? It's not in the Moors circle message. I apologize, Moors. Now that I'm thinking in the brain, it's not there. It's in. The divine warning by the prophet. That's where it is. Okay, and I'm going to go to page 3 on in this book. I'm not sure in your where it might be. I'm going to go down to the first, second, third, fourth, fifth paragraph. It says, I love my people, and I desire their unity and mind back to their own national and divine standard, because day by day they have been violating the national and constitutional laws of their government by claiming names and principles that are unconstitutional. If Italians, Greeks, English, Chinese, Japanese, Turks, and Arabians are forced to proclaim their free national name and religion before the constitutional government of the United States, it is no more than right that the law should be enforced upon all other American citizens alike. In all other governments, when a man is born and raised there and asks for his national identification, for his national decent name, and he fails to give it, he is misused, imprisoned, or exiled. Any group of people that fail to answer up to the constitutional standards by law, by name, and principles, because to be a citizen of any government, you must claim your national decent name. You must claim it. Does that not sound like what Jesse Jackson did in 1988? In 1988, Jesse Jackson made the same argument, but instead of identifying us as Moors or Asiatics, he identified us with the continent of Africa, which Africa has many nations, and I always tell people, and, people look at me strange when they say, well, I'm an African American. I say, well, that's fine if that's what you want to be called, African American, but what nation of Africa are you from? And also Europeans be considered African Americans because they're born in Africa too. So when Europeans are born in Africa, the parts of Africa that they're born in there under that landmass, and they come over here to America, they could be African Americans also. So that cannot be your racial makeup. All right. You have to have a nation that you associate with. But that was Jesse Jackson in that era time striving to make his point that that we should not be known by colors. And so back during that time and that work that he did, and I give him much honor for that, trying to fix that. I'm not criticizing the man because he really tried to fix it in what his understanding was. We all have a portion in this with good unto ourselves, right? So his fight was that we should be color-based. Because listen, even with the word black and Negro are the same words. It's just that black is an American term, and then the Moorish Latin or Spanish word nigger or negra means the same thing. It means black. So when you say you're a Negro, you're saying you're black. When you say you're black, you're saying you're a Negro. You're not saying anything different. You have not made any steps or strives to anything else. You're still a Negro because you're just using that term. Those synonyms, Negro, black, two different words, same meaning, right? All right. So I didn't want to go over that information. I was just so excited to be able to share that with you all today. Okay. And so I laid up, and so what I did, there's over 50 different nations in Africa, but some of the examples in the names of Africa I did type up: Nigeria, Morocco, Ethiopian, Senegal, Ghana, Egypt, today is called Egypt, it was Kenya, Sudan, right? So all these different people would be considered. And then when you talk about Italian American, the nation would be Italy. When you talk about Irish American, the nation would be Ireland, right? So all these people have special identifications. When you come to black, it has none. Black has no social identification because it can't, because it's talking about social class. And so now the Europeans put you under either black or you're white. So no matter what nation, so how do you come from a landmass with a nationality and then you allow them to put you in a classification? So you lose all of your birthrights as a national, free national, coming to the United States of America to assimilate here and get it taken away from you and being classed as black. Now, you have some people, as a young nurse, I met a lot of people, some people who would come to this country and they would not take on the term or names of those countries, because when you used to come over here before, you were given what they call a Christian name. You had to come over here. They had to baptize you or whatever and give you a Christian name. And I learned a lot from a lot of sisters from Panama and things like that that came over. And they tell you, they literally let you know that that's what happens, right? They have to make a contract. They have to sign it. They won't associate with us. They don't move them in our neighborhoods. It's just all kinds of ridiculousness that happens when they want to keep people down. And I'll never forget once they said that all they saw on television over there in their country was us in the ghettos. They showed gang movies and murder each other. So they made those movies for our entertainment and theirs too, because it showed them that we were less than human is what they tried to make us. And then they let these people, so when these people come over here with an attitude and they think they're better than you because that's what they've been told, that they're better than you are. So it's so important to follow the instructions of the prophet. And that's the prophet said, give them all those things that belong to them. Those Negro brand, give that back to them. So your name is not, Maurice Williams Eel or, Davida Johnson Bay. Because what happens is you might get named Davida, which is one of my favorite names. I love David, which I love Daoud, but in modern term today, Daoud is David, and then Davida was when girls were named after their fathers, David, and that was one of my favorite Asiatic names. I remember coming up, one of my good friends' name was Davida, and I just was so enamored with her name, like, oh my goodness, Davida, she's named after, like it was an Asiatic name, not some crazy European name. It was Asiatic names I started being identified with. Even believe it or not, we started calling our children Tyrone, right? And Europeans, I've never met one European named Tyrone. Not one. Not any nationality of man is named Tyrone, except our men. So Tyrone is considered one of our names, even though I would name any of my children Tyrone, but it's just considered one of our names. And so when you hear Erica singing that song, you better call Tyrone, because Tyrone is relatable to who that is, a brother related to the brother named Ty, who's usually that hood brother, got, a whole bunch of friends and whatever. So Tyrone always signs with that sister. But that is some of the things that we need to associate with. So our classification is real big for us. So having our names are real big for us. And I love sharing my stories. Like I said, take these journeys with me. My uncle Ike. I never forget when Roots came out and all these people were starting to name their children Kunta, Kizzy, and all these names. And they were naming their children. I was excited. My uncle was excited. We sat down and talked about it. My uncle I think I spent more time with my uncle than most people knew. Catching that train to Philadelphia, learning that wisdom. But anyway, so one day I was really upset about something. Him and I were talking at that back then we had those, old phones, push dial phones and trim line. And so I was talking to my uncle and I was saying that one of my girlfriends, I was talking to her, she had named her daughter after my daughter's name was Takesha, Takeysha, and she wanted to name her daughter Takesha, but she wanted to name her middle name Juanita, which my daughter's name is Donita. And but then she wanted to give her the slave last name. So I said, why would you mimic my daughter's whole name? Because she loved her name. And then name your child Davis, or what I can't even recall what her last name was right now. I think it was Cross, something like that. Anyway, and so I called my uncle about it because, again, young, some things I just wanted to be right here, right now, make it done, fix it. And so my uncle said, but think about where we've come from. He said, think about that, where we come from, the names that we were given and the names that we are now giving our children. Think about that. Even if we're taking some time with the last names, he said, think about the names that they are giving them, like they have some pride in them, those names. And eventually that generation, trustfully, will start dropping the last names and giving their children names, like even if they did like Muhammad or Akbar, even though our people try to say that those are Arabian names, belong to the Arabians. False. False. those migrants came over there and adopted our religion and took on our attributes and names. Those names do not belong to them. False. But anyway, and so, he said maybe that might happen over time. And so my thought was, well, Bay, Ali, and Il, may be better than, any other name because it identifies us with our Moorish identity. And he was like, yes, but everybody doesn't claim to be Moorish. And, so that's the thing. Everybody may not accept on Moorish science, but at least they'll accept a free name, a free status. It will not be under this slave term. So Muhammad is not a slave term. Someone tried to say that it was. Muhammad is not a slave term. Those terms are not slave terms that they have. A lot of those people over there in the East, a lot of them are named Muhammad's and spelled different ways according to landmass and location. But the bottom line is that those are names that belong to us. They do not allude to slavery. And so I say here in the year 2026, everybody, family has been associated with someone in Moorish science. And I say this every single week. I don't care who you are or where you're from. Everyone has been associated with Moorish science. Somebody knows somebody. You may not be practicing it, but a family member, a cousin, a friend, someone you work with, someone that's practiced Moorish science or is into Islamic beliefs and Islamic traditions and have. So we should be far past naming our children those names in 2026. And I have to dare say that we should think about those names because I hear people taking on these slave names and doing proud of them, proud of their slave names. I'll use, I can use any slave name, but people are like, oh, she talking about me. I'm talking in general. But let's use the name Bristow. Let's just take the name Bristow. That was my mother's maiden name. So I can use, I'm safe with anything I use, but I'm going to use Bristow. With the name Bristow, they say, oh, we from the Bristow tribe, Bristow family. Oh, we from the Bristow tribe, Bristow family, and you name these children. Oh, we from the Bristows. We own this and we own that, and we the Bristows and we the Bristows and we the Bristows. And the Bristows belong to the slave master who was Bristow. And remember, a slave cannot really own property. So if they really want to come after you for their last name, they can say identity theft. You took on a name that has nothing to do with you, but yet you're so proud of another man's name. And that's, again, colonialism, brainwashing. That's what that is. You're proud to have another man's name, but yet you want to make, when I say Bay, huh? How you spell that? Or Daria or Muhammad? We make all kinds of faces and act crazy because we have names that traditionally are ours, and you have names that only take you back to the time of slavery. Yeah, you want to be angry with me for identifying who I am, the way I look, the way I dress, the way I talk, and everything to my own. That's what you go back to your own. Yet you assimilate into another man's culture, and you take pride in that and want to get angry with me because I do not. And so these are the things in our mind that we have to clear up. When I hear, let me tell you, I get so excited when I see a red turban or a red fez, or someone's passing by in a car or a vehicle, and I'll be like, oh, was that a turban? Was that a fez? And things like that. And I just still get so excited. And it should be normalized today. But because so many of us have taken our turbans off, taken our feathers off, and listen, the prophet told you to, if he said you do not believe in I, the prophet, he did say turn your card button. Cease where your turban fast and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you, which means state of mind where he found you at, not physical state of mind where he found you at. If you don't believe in the work that has to be done, you should. The sad thing for me is that why would you? Why would you want to turn in anything? Do you know how, I have to share this with Sheikh Daoud Alantu Bey. When I met that brother, he was one of the brothers that let me know how important the prophet was to him, like the prophet is to me. So he was telling me the story, and I'm just, I'm trust you don't mind me sharing, Dawood, but y'all tell these stories to me. I'm going to share them. That when he found out who he was, he cried. And I think he said it was like 3 months. He just stayed in his house and just studied and studied and studied because he couldn't believe that, that he, all this time, people had been lying to them, had been lying to him, that he was black, and he didn't know that he had a nationality or a birthright. And he literally cried physical tears to find out that he had a name, a nationality, and a birthright. Do you know how rewarding that is? Do you know that the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, I know he felt the joy when he nationalized people. I know that he saw it in their faces lighten up. Look, the movement got so large and so many people that he had to put out a divine warning. He had to tell the Moors, listen, don't go kill. Because when they found out the Europeans had been lying to them, the Moors went off. They went berserk, according to my uncle. And he had to slow them down and say, listen, he had to put out a divine warning. Stop flashing your cards at Europeans. It causes confusion. Remember your cards for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be a severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. So he had to go and literally calm the Moors down because they were so excited. And I think about that, so excited, I just can't hide it. That is the pride we should have in being who we are. So excited that you just want to shout it out. But it seems like today the fire has dimmed. Not for me. It will never dim for me. All I've been through, and I can share some of those stories with you all, this movement and people, my light does not dim. I remember when I was younger in Sunday school, we used to sing a song, and I'm not into the singing songs or whatever, but I know the spiritual side of the movement gave a lot of elders that this little light of mine, and I cannot sing, so I'm not going to give you all a taste of what I do not do. I'm not going to say I cannot sing. You can do anything you desire to do. I just don't have the vibrational voice that you want to hear or sing. But the song was called This Little Light of Mine. I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. And I remember our grand sheik used to, I'm going to let it shine all over the altar. I'm going to let it shine. I'm going to let it shine all over the star and crescent. I'm going to let it shine. I'm going to let it shine all over the circle 7. I'm going to let it shine. I'm going to let it shine all over the Holy Koran and the Moorish Science Temple of America. I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. And I remember he would have so much joy when he was singing that. And the members would get to it. They would start stomping their feet lightly, and just moving in rhythm because we're rhythmic people. And, that was just so good. And seeing the pride in them, those elders bestowed the pride in me of who I am because they were so proud of who they were. From dietary laws to clothing, the Moors loved every bit of it. And so I truly miss those Moors, their ancestors now. I truly, truly miss the Moors because they let you know that it was all right to be Moorish American. They let you know it was all right to proclaim your status. It was all right to dress and eat and think the way you thought. It was great because they knew that you were a reflection of them. They felt comfortable transitioning on to whatever other work they had to do because they knew that you would carry out the work. Now, for me, did I know that I would come to where I am today, doing the work of the prophet? Absolutely not. When my uncle used to bring me over, they'd have me read these books and tell me this and give me these honorary degrees and things like that. And I have all these papers that he gave me and kept elevating me. And I was like, what do I do with all of this? Young sister saying those things. But as I got older, as I read the information that he told me to read, as I went to the books that he told me to go to, as I studied the information that he told me to study, I saw what he was telling me. I learned about all the people from The Dingle Ill brothers. I learned all about them brothers. I felt like I knew them through my uncle. I found out about them. I found out about others too. That you know, all the things in the movement that different people wanted to associate with. I found out about these different members and different leaders and carrying out the movement. And so I was very, very proud and still very, very proud of who I am and my legacy. But I have to go back to, if it wasn't for Prophet Noble Drew Ali coming here telling us who we were, I would not even be able to be on this broadcast talking about him, giving much honor to him. And the most amazing thing when he told them, when you give honor to man or woman, you give honor to Allah. What man does for man or woman, they do for love. We honor each other, we give each other respect and honor, and that's the way it should be. So if someone has a position or entitlement that they do have, then you honor that. So when I say Grand Sheik, and I'm calling the Sheik, that's a Grand Sheik, they earned the title, I'm calling you Grand Sheik. If it's a brother or sister that tell me they're Sheik, and I don't know whether they're Sheik or not, they're telling me, I'm going to honor what they say they're Sheik. I have to go by their word. If someone tells me that they have different degrees in Moorish science too. Now, a muftis, my son is a mufti. He's a grand mufti. I, call him Mufti Shamsuddin. So when people have different degrees and honorary degrees, I like to call them by the title that they honor. It has nothing to do with it. But people who do not have those degrees, they want to make them feel bad and show them who told them they was this and who told them they was that and all that stuff. If you have to get somebody to constantly tell you who you are on a constant basis, then there's a problem. Maybe you felt as though that you were honorary sheik or whatever you thought. I don't know. I mean, if you put that upon yourself, what I'm saying, if you take on the title, do what? Take on the work. Do not take on a title and then you do not do the work. That's the only problem that I have with anyone who has titles. If they take on titles, but they don't do the work on which the title, which they say that they are, then I have problems with that. All right. So I wanted to just go over some of that. And so I want to see a couple of things in the chat. I did say, let me see. So get your email today. So did not get your email for today. I do apologize. I didn't send that email out, but I wanted to make sure that you all did. I do apologize. It is probably some less people today because I didn't send the email out, but I'm here every Thursday, right, from 7 to 9. So I do apologize for that. Shukran for coming on anyway. And you're in the UK. Alhamdulillah. You're in the UK. All right. Oh, that's just the Anna ill. All right. Wonderful. Someone says Ramadan and Lent. I'm not sure if you're asking me the difference between Ramadan and Lent, but I can share this with you. A lot of the Catholic traditions are coming straight from Islam, from the hijabs that they wear, what they call habits, to the beads that they call rosary beads, that we have the prayer beads. The Prophet Muhammad used to take stone and dry fruits to count those prayer beads, come from there. So a lot of the traditions from Islam, the Catholic Church uses. And so Lent is a time of fasting. And so they use that too. So we do Ramadan, they do Lent. So trust me, that was helpful somewhat to you. Let's see. Honor to the spirit of truth, Islamism, prime intervention to reobey sheep. Allow me, beg shukran for that. Let's see. Sheikh Madudi, you're on here. Alhamdulillah. Peace and love, Prime Minister. So Islam Moors. Ramadan Mubarak. Yes, shukran. Yes, Ramadan. Colored is a social construct. It sure is. A teach Prime Minister, the Nigerian movement, 1905, became the NAACP. Now, because of the history I have on the NAACP, I don't know about the Nigerian movement because the NAACP came from a European organization. The Europeans called themselves Jews, created the NAACP historically. So if you have more information on that, please share it with me. I'd love to talk about that with you because the whole a thing about the NAACP. I don't know about the Nigerian movement, and I'm pretty historically sound. I do know that the NAACP is created by just people that call themselves Jews. They created the NAACP. I don't ever remember it being a Nigerian movement, but I'd love to have some more information on that, more intel on that if you have it. Shukran for sharing that. And so, listen, like I said, I don't know it all. I don't know everything. You know, I'm going to share what I know. You bring what you know. We're going to keep this conversation going, taking this journey with me, because I think it's a beautiful journey, a wonderful journey. I have to keep connecting us to Prophet Noah Drawley, and how without the Prophet, like I love these beautiful comments here, without the Prophet, we wouldn't even be able to have this conversation and share our intellect, our portions of understanding. So, shukran. All right, so I'm going to take another sip of tea. I'm going to, doesn't this look good? Just, try to keep my throat, especially after fasting all day. I was so glad that Iftar was supposed to be right there when before I started this segment. And I just made this beautiful vegan chili. It's just so good to chili. And I made mango pomegranate, what'd you call it, like a salsa, mango pomegranate salsa with some chips. Oh my goodness, just so good. And I made some okra tomato and corn. So I had a wonderful meal, breaking it. Of course, you had to drink with water, and dates are so sweet to me. So I try to get at least a full date in, but I'm working on that. Every year it takes me like a couple of days before I can get a full date in. So I got like half of a date in and in the water. Then I ate, because dates are just really, really sweet to me. So anyway, all right. So I want to go back over the information that I have here. And so we have a little bit more time. We have like 30, like 35 more minutes. All right. So I wanted to go over let's see, if Martha had so much information here. All right, so I wanted to go over the historical names. So I want to go over Africa is later historical name. And I went over this last week about Africa. And so when I was talking to you about the AFRI, right, people of North African tribe, or possible Phoenicians, and I spoke somewhat on the Phoenicians, right? And so when it's talking about the AFRI, this is the name is saying that one of the ancient names from Africa, but I also gave you all Akambuna last week, which we are considered, that's who we are long, which is considered the Garden of Eden. The name for that is the Garden of Al-Ukambula. For the Garden of Eden, or the home of the birth, and any ancient terms for that. So, before, because we know Africa is still a new landmass, right? We know all of that was one total landmass. But I went over to the African, and so okay, so in antiquity, people identified themselves by civilization or nation. And so it gave me, when I looked up this information, it gave me a lot of the ancient civilizations that were before Africa even became Africa. And, of course, we know that ancient Egypt is Kemet. And I don't know why they changed that. Like, Kemet sounds so much better than Egypt. And I remember Egypt. Akupta is another name. But they were called Kush and Nubia and Exium, and where Prophet told us it was a Mexum, Carthage, Nomina, Mali, Moorish kingdoms, Berber, and Amazon society. So it's a lot of ancient Moor societies, but we know that even the word Moor is a more modern term because of the landmass. But at least with the Moor, it identifies you to a landmass. When we're saying that we're ancient people, and of course, as I said, times change, names change, things like that. The bottom line is that you can identify yourself with a nation. So for the Moors, we could identify ourselves with our territory. The Kingdom of Morocco, we know this is the Moroccan government. All those things we can associate ourselves with. Black itself has no classification to land, mass, or people. There's nowhere historically where people called themselves black. It was dark, burnt like the sun, swarthy. I went over these the week prior, but there's no time in history that we ever called ourselves black, ever. And that is a problem when we try to take an ancient people, fit them into a modern concept, and sell it to the people that you've been black since ancient time. And it's just untrue to that. Even when you break down identification to an old dictionary, even put it today into these AI systems, it will tell you, and then, that man makes AI, but they're not going to benefit telling you the truth about yourself. It tells you that there was no time that people were ever black. People were made known by tribes, as I said before, nationality for identification, never black. And so when they try to make you so proud of being black, and I talked about this the week prior about this new commercial, they have the black experience and this black and that black, and trying to make you so happy that you're black, 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 and you're not. Black as a social construct takes you out of the human family, right? Because, and what does it mean? White by classification means that they're the upper. That's why the prophet said white white means purity, goodness, godliness, right? That's what white means. So they gave themselves the term white. So they're everything good. And black is everything in lower class, deaf, degrading, void of light, no life in, right? That's why we named that river. So when we have all of these things that terms, and they now try to break you, because according historically, the red, yellow, brown did not take off. That didn't take off. So white and black are the two that took off, and because of the two classes. So they want to put you in a class, either you white or you black. Those are the classes that they want to put you in. So if you're anyone in any skin pigment showing of your skin, any melanation of your skin, or your hair being that, because everyone has some sort of melanin, they just is not as melanated as we are, that all of that would identify you by that social class. So that means the darker your skin is, then that means that you're classified as nobody because your skin is dark, or white because your skin is not white. So those are social classes and classifications, and this is where the problem begins, because anyone, they want to make you think that they talk about your skin complexion. And I had on black last week, and I used this chair behind me to let you all see what black looks like and represents. And my book, My Hair is Your Conscious Connection to the Universe, I talk about the black and white experiment, right? And so the thing is that we have to identify ourselves with this. And the prophet so badly wanted us to know who we were. When he said, "Come, all ye Asiatics of America, and hear the truth about your nationality and birthright." And that's, he plainly said, the truth about, because he knew we did not know. And so he started teaching us the truth about our nationality and birthrights. And then he said, because you are not Negroes, colored folks, black people. He let us know those things. We were not those things. And those things that deluded to slavery, we had a name, a nationality, and a birthright. And so now we have to practice that on a daily basis, ongoing basis. We have to practice that name, that nationality, and that birthright. We have to do that. And if you don't want to practice your name, nationality, and birthright, then you want to be classed as undesirable. And all the mistreatments that the people who consider themselves citizens care to bestow upon you, you deserve, because you do not want to claim who you are. Now, not knowing who you are and not claiming it is something different. But to know better and don't do better is a whole entirely something different. And so if someone's talking, if I saw this broadcast right now, my first and second segment, say someone introduced it to me and I saw it, and I'd be like, oh, what is she talking about? I wouldn't shrug it off right away. Oh, I'm listening to her. I would be taking notes. And I'll be writing down what is being said and upon my own investigation. And then I would come back and have questions in the chat so we could communicate better, communicate effectively. Because that makes no sense in this era of time in 2026 for anyone to going around with names alluding to slavery, and that includes your birth names. Your parents are living in a society right now where you should not have names that allude to slavery. I'm adjusting my back in my chair to apologize. Names that allude to slavery. You should not have any of those right now. Everything in today's society, everything in today's society is based on nationality and birthrights, not classifications of black people, white people. And now I hear so many people trying to throw in brown. Like I said the week prior, they want to make you a color. And so it's social construct. What color would brown do? So I did write information on that. Let me find where I wrote the differences on here. I think I'm coming around to it now. All right, so let me go here where I said the word black is a human classification. All right, so I say here in that with my research, the English word black originally described color, darkness, absence of light, or physical appearance of objects. In ancient societies, people were not primarily classified by color categories in modern racial sense. Ancient comedians, Greeks, Romans, Arabs, and others typically describe people by homeland, language, tribe, kingdom, or religion. Let me say that again. In ancient societies, people were described by homeland, language, tribe, kingdom, or religion. Color terms existed, but they were not descriptive of people or political identities. So, of course, colors were always in a concept. I have on red, the color red for a red stone, or the color brown, but it did not classify a people. It only classified things that were non-human, things, objects, but not people. Again, so I want you all to write that down. People were classified by homeland, language, tribe, kingdoms, or religion. They did not have colors of people. All right, the word black, and again, I did more research on it. Between 1600 and 1700, during European colonial expansion and the Atlantic, what they consider slave trade, during these times, the Europeans thought about color-based terms such as white, black, red, yellow. And these were increasingly used in colonial law and social hierarchy. Historians describe these categories as a social classifications, not ancient nationality identities. And I want to say that one more time, that historians generally describe these categories, because I wanted to know what historians, people who really thought, historians generally describe these categories as social classifications, not ancient national identities. It has nothing to do with nationality and birthright. Nothing. All right. Then I took it upon myself. So why are these terms used? Over time, communities sometimes adopt redefined terms that were originally imposed in the 20th century. And then they capitalize on these terms. Okay. Uses and meanings: historical, legal, racial classification, social shared experiences, cultural identity chosen by some other communities or people, and national, not a nationality. Has nothing to do with religion. Nationality versus racial labels. Nationality refers to citizenship, nationality, nations, political belongings. Okay? That's what nationality does. All right? For racial as a social construct, that has nothing to do with a people. It is used by the people that actually created the construct. So that's what that is. So when people start trying to identify you, then again, I put ancient identities, kingdoms, modern racial terminology, and present day self-identification. The word black existed before it described people. It is used as human classification, largely emerged in the early modern colonial societies. It represents a social category rather than a nationality. Modern usage varies depending on historical culture or personal context. So they use those terms again, no matter where you find it, and I trust you're listening to me, you will not find black. So when Moore is still trying to find himself black and say I'm a black Indian and this and that, and I seen one brother that I used to admire, and I don't want to cause confusion. I'm not going to call your name. I'll call himself an Indian, which is so ridiculous when that's another misclassification of people. And in my book, I have it, and I'll bring it up. All the things that I want to go over with you, I have listed up from my book, different things that I'm sharing. And the thing is that we should never want to use the word black again unless it's describing an inanimate object, which means something that has no life in it. It was never used to describe a people. When that word started being used to describe a people, it was for derogatory purposes. This is why the prophet said, you are not black. You are not Negroes, because Negroes and black people are the same people. The word is a synonym of the same thing. Black is a Negro is black. No different. Colored is anything that's painted, stained, varnished, or dyed. Anything you can dye is what's colored. You got your primary and secondary colors. These different colors you have, you can use these colors in anything. You can color things, make colors up and all of that. You don't make up this hue. You don't make up this is natural. You don't make this up. Now we do have people today that's bleaching their skin pale. I mean, they bleaching their skin right off their face with chemicals. I mean, look at Michael Jackson. He set the trend for it. Little Kim. I mean, they bleaching their melon right off, but they have to keep going back to get that done because this is going to return. This is going to return because this is natural. So after a while, I worked with a girl who kept going chemical peels on her face. She was the darkest one in her family. I thought she was beautiful. Like, I thought she was one of the most beautiful women I ever seen on earth. She was not happy with herself. And she would come to work with her face burning from chemical peels on her face. And she kept coming back, trying to get lighter and lighter. She was the darkest one in her family, is what she told me. I don't know her family, so I've seen pictures of them. And so she wanted to be lighter, like everyone else. And so we're not happy with our melanin in our skin because we have more melanin in our skin than anyone else because we're the natural people. Melanin creates other melanated beings. Non-melanin does not create melanin. And so therefore we had to give this melanin for people to survive, to come out of the beastly way they were living into a humanized form. And so that takes melanin. So this is our melanin that's in our skin, and we should be very proud of that melanin. And the deeper your melanin is, listen, the more beautiful to me. I remember when I was young, my uncle had this friend, and he used to say, they call him blue black. And I said, what's blue? What is blue black? And my uncle said his friends call him that. They say he's so dark that he looked purple. And I said, and my uncle showed me a picture. I said, there's nothing blue or black about this man. Even when you put him up, the darkest hue of individual. My uncle wasn't calling him black. That's what the other people called him. But you would take his skin and put it up to any color, black or purple, and he didn't look like either one of those colors. His skin was very heavily melanated, and I think it was the most beautiful thing I ever seen. So there's nothing wrong with the melanin in your skin. Now, the prophet said we come in Rotarian complexions. We have our deepest olive to the lightest olive of us. We love them all in Rotarian complexion. So we all are not the exact same. We don't all look the same. How could we? This is the difference in our features and things like that, make us who we are from different tribes. But we should love ourselves no matter what tribe you're from. Learn to love yourself. No one else is going to love you more than you. So learn to love yourself. When you learn to love yourself, you can learn to love others. All right. So I came from the Moorish literature, and I wanted to talk about, I came from the Moorish literature, and I wanted everybody to see that. And I think this is like $7 on circle7publishing.com. So the Moorish literature. But I wanted to talk a little bit about education today and why the prophet said we need to have a school. So This book is called The Origins and Pearls of Modern Education and Mandatory Schooling. You can find this again on circle7publishing.com. You can find that right on there, circle7publishing.com. You'll see it right there. It's the book and fashion, etc. And to donate to our online schooling, you have the $ online schooling MC, and then our humanitarian organization, which is the Daughters of Drew Ali. So I want to come from here really quickly, and I was talking to you all about the General Education Board the week prior, and I did say that I would come on and give this to you all again. And like I said, Taj and I wrote this book to have people donate to the school, because people want to know, if I donate, what am I going to get? So we figured, if you only donate $10, you're donating to the school by purchasing this book, because our people want something. They don't want to donate and don't see something for what they donate. And listen, I'm not here to argue with you about that. If that's the way you feel like it is your dollars, I'm not in your pocket. But the thing is that you should donate to our causes, online schooling for Moorish children. All right, I wanted the General Education Board. See, it's on page School Rights of Child, Diversity Step, Animal Husbandry, General Education Board is on page 21 to 22. So I wanted to go over that really quickly with you all. We were talking about that. And that's the General Education Board quote there in that square. And I'm going to read it. It says, the General Education Board philosophy. It says, in our dreams, we have limited resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand. The present educational conventions fade from their minds, unhampered by traditions. We work our own good. We will upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or of science. We have not to raise up from among them authors, orators, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have an ample supply. The task we set before ourselves is very simple, as well as very beautiful one: to train these people as we find them to a perfectly ideal life just where they are. So we will organize our children into a little community and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way, in the homes, in the shops, and on the farm. General Education Board, this is Occasional Papers number 1, The Country School of Tomorrow, General Education Board, New York in 1913. And so this is Rockefeller number. They wrote this in 1913. So with the education system, they wasn't looking to build anything other than what they needed, which was migrant workers. They needed people to do factory work, and they didn't want you to really have an education. You were up to do training. And that's what it was for. So they cared nothing about you at all. Nothing about you at all. And so they didn't care nothing about you then, and they certainly don't care anything about you right now. Okay? And that's just the honest truth. They could care less at all about us and what we need in our societies. We know for us as Moors, we need more physicians. We need more people that practice law, right? We need the people that will build our society and keep us healthy. We need that to keep our minds right? We need that in our society, because listen, no other people, there's no way, if I'm having some type of social crisis in my life and they say you need mental health, so say my mental health, I'm going to go to some European and talk about my mental health, talk about what's going on in my family, my society, to some European. And what is that the most ridiculous thing? They will never be able to empathize or understand our plight, what we go through as a people every day, even to wake up in the middle of a night with a dream. It's not a dream that they would have. Why would we even set ourselves up for failure that way? So we need, to, if you want this booklet information we have in here, support us. It's only $10 at circle7publishing.com, and go ahead and order that booklet. All right. This is a book I told you all that I wrote about who are the Moors. And as you can see who's on the front of there, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't know I was a Moor. I don't care what anyone else says. No one else came to teach me who I was. This man did. And so, who are the Moors? And some of the things in here, one of the things I wanted to go over with you all when I was talking about it, this is when we had Obama, and it was a American flag on the other side. I had cut that out when I did the booklet, but this was a Michelle Obama and Barack when they were walking through the flags, and I just only wanted to keep our beautiful flag up there. But this is Michelle and Obama, and when they walked through. And so I wanted to go over a couple of things that I had wrote with our conversation. All right, so I have wrote in here purpose. And that's in the top of this book. I'm going to share my purpose that I wrote. This book is for educational purposes only, is not designed to assist the reader, is assigned to assist the reader in understanding who are the Moors today and who they were in the past. It also attempts to explore the importance of knowing one's birthrights, ancestral lineage or heritage, and therefore one's civic orientation among the family of nations. The question is of race. Those who claim their race as either Black, Negro, colored, Ethiopian, African American, or other have been programmed to think these labels are racist. A simple but factual historical reference will help to dispel these untruths, which is the one of these are a race. The only true race is the human race. People who use any of the above labels have no idea of their social status and therefore do not know they have a nationality. Every nation on earth teaches its people their true heritage and ensures the education in civics to its national citizens. Civics is defined as of or pertaining to citizenship. They are taught to pass the knowledge of their family heritages down to their children and their children's children. This mechanism of self-preservation is a right given by the Creator and a divine responsibility of every species on this earth. When a people lose their nationality, they lose their birthright to the land of their ancestors because they know not where they come from. Thus, they are unaware of their inheritance and true political and social status. This begs the question, how can an entire nation, race of people become lost to their cultural and ancestral history? And that's a challenge up there. That's a challenge up there. How does that happen? Wasn't their information passed down from generation to generations to ensure its integrity? And then inside of there is what so we call him, and I go from there. And then I talk about foot. And next week, I connect that and talk about foot in here, and the whole thing about foot and etymology of the Moor. So this is a great book that I wrote some years ago, back in 2016. Wow, 10 years ago. And this information is still relevant today. So the anniversary of this book, alhamdulillah, 10 years ago. So I'm not new on this journey, Moors. I've been on this journey for quite a while. And I just did tell you all I was going to introduce you all to some books. And each week I'll introduce you all to different books you may be interested in reading some of those books. All right. But I just wanted to let you all know that we do have the information out there. It's not just I'm not just a talking head up here just talking. I actually have research and information. And then like I said, and there's just more books that we have, so many books that we do have. I also want to take this time to say happy born day. The day of Taj's birth was on February the 14th, the day they call Valentine's Day, which is another joke and a lie. But anyway, Taj, I did call him and say happy born day. I just wanted to put it out there on the air too. I'm not sure exactly what they did on his born day. Usually they do some type of celebration for his born day, but I just wanted to say happy born day to you, Grand Sheik. And so I want to just make sure we've been on this journey a long time together, you and I. And, I just want to thank you for allowing me to teach this to you so that you could teach others, because it's so important that this goes down. A lot of people wouldn't know about more science if it wasn't for Taj coming on the air some years ago and talking the information that he learned. And so because of that, a lot of people have waken up. And because of that, I've learned about so many other Moors in different territories and different places. So I just really want to thank the Grand Sheik too, and take time to honor him and thank him for all the great work that he has done along the way. Because listen, this is not a one individual job. It's not. This work is just worldwide for everyone to take a part in doing their part. And I certainly enjoy doing mine. Before we close out for today's segment, I wanted to go over a few other things for you all to write down. And just remember that a lot of the information that I'm giving you all, you can actually look it up. If you desire to, you can go ahead and look it up. All right, so I wanted to go over, I'm just back up a little bit. So I wanted to go, so with the life, it was about historical examination, about nationality, birthrights, and religion. These things were historical information. And the life of Noble Drew Ali reminds us that education, identity, and citizenship are deeply connected. Because when the prophet said that we needed to have schools, right, he knew that because he knew that the educational system that we have right now was not designed to educate our people. So we have a school right here, right here. It's called our school is online schooling for Moorish children. And you'll see right there that online schooling for Moorish children, you'll see that on the site. And then underneath, you'll see the green sign. It says $ online schooling MC. And you'll see that right at the bottom. And so one of the things I wanted to let you all know is that we really need donations for our school. And we do also need more students. I have excellent educators here, excellent instructors. They're here to make sure we educate your children's mind and erudite your children's minds to excellence. That's what we want to do here. We want them to have some self-pride, self-awareness, feel like they are worthy of oneself, knowing who they are, and be proud that they can say they went to a school with their own people. They was able to wear their own clothing. I have to share a story. One of our students, she practiced Islam, her mother, from what I know the family does. And she felt like outcast, I guess, everywhere she went. She said since she's been in this school, she's the most comfortable because she can be herself here. She can wear her clothing here. She can talk about her religion here. She can talk about her people here, and she's not judged. And so I know some of you all use the public school system as a babysitter. And you said, why should I pay to send the children to your school when I can educate them for free at the public school? But in the public school system, your children are being indoctrinated. Someone else is indoctrinating your children from the time they get up in the rising to go until the time they come home at night. And I know that you probably say they feed them breakfast, they feed them lunch. How healthy is that food? And then when they come home, all you have to do is give them dinner, put them to bed, give them dinner, trustfully a bath, put them to bed, and then get up the next day and start all over again. And it causes you nothing, and you have your own perfect babysitter. At what cost? That's why you need to get also the book, The Rights of the Child. And you need to get this book right here. Because we tell you why it's not all right to send your children to those institutions. And the prophet told us that we need to have a school. He also told that anyone to teach you or educate you, they have to be one that look like you, that talk like you. That is what we need. People that look like us, talk like us, and listen. First of all, being an individual that's a more Asiatic, having deep melanin in my skin, I'm so excited about being that individual. So I'm not saying, oh, just because you say you are more melanated that we should follow you. I'm saying, come to this school and bring your children because it's the right thing to do. Because in this same booklet, when we talk about economic security, and we know that the foundation of most cities and things is based on the educational system. The prophet tells us in this very, very booklet. Let me see my time that I have. So I have time to go over this really quickly with you all. One more thing. He says, and it's when we talk about economics. He says, let me find it. He says, I want to see where I want to start. All right, I'll start here. He said, it is a sad weakness in it is a sad weakness in us, after all, to oppose our fellow men for their religious beliefs. And if there are angels who record the sorrows of men as well as their sins, they certainly know how many and deep are the useless sorrows that spring forth from such opposition. Possibly love and time will counsel all ancient hatred in this regard and prove that in mankind tolerance is better than unwarranted opposition. In connection with our religious aims and beliefs, we must promote economic security. The preaching of economic security among us is by no means as widespread and intensive as the circumstances demand. No one thing is more needed amongst us at this time than greater economic power, better positions for our men and women, more business employment for our boys and girls, and bigger incomes will follow our economic security. We shall be secure in nothing until we have great economic power. A beggar people cannot develop the highest in them, nor can they attain to a genuine enjoyment of the spiritualities of life. And he goes on to say, our men, women, and children should be taught to believe in the capacity of our group to succeed in business. In spite of the trials and failures of some of them, trials and failures in business are by no means confined to any particular group of people. Some business ventures of all people fail. And this is where it gets good. Many men and women among our people who are qualified both by training and experience, who are shining their lights in the business world of all people. It is a sad weakness in us as a people that we withheld the very encouragements, patronage, and made for our worthy business adventures to be a grand success. And worst of all, have joined in the condemnation of them, they fail. Okay? And that's because when we allow our business to fall, we allow our businesses to fail because we do not support our businesses. And so he's saying that that's the shame of it. That even if the business was to fail, it would have never failed if it was supported by the very people that the business were designed for. And so our school is designed for our people. We have no business loans. We don't get any type of fiat from anywhere. We're not state funded or state organization. We don't want state funding, someone coming in trying to tell us how to teach our children and what to teach. That's what happens when you decide to take fiat from someone else. They come in and they run the show. And when they decide to shut you down, they shut you down. If they decide to cause problems for you, they cause problems for you. We do not want those problems for ourselves. So I wanted to just try to run through that really quickly. But that if you have a Moorish literature, you please look that up into the Moorish literature. And if you like to get any of the literature from us, go to circle7publishing.com. Shamsuddin said he's going to make a new banner with the .com on there. He didn't put that on there, circle7publishing.com. To donate to our school is $ online school and MC. All those are cash apps. Or we also have $ Daughters of Drew Ali. All right. And so you can definitely donate to any of those at any time. All right. We would love to have those donations. And then we still have to put the new, it's not new, but it's another method of donating where you can donate right through, whether it's credit card or however you want to do it, or mail in check, cash, money order. You can make it to online schooling for Moorish children or Moorish Nation. You can make it out to any of those things, if you feel secure in doing that with a check or money order. All right. So again, I want to thank everyone for coming out today, to make sure that they, support me in this. There's a few more. One more says the desegregation broke us, and then they so-called Jews educate their own. Why can't we? Absolutely. You got an absolute point. The people that call themselves Jews, the stolen identity, take care of themselves. why can't we take of ourselves? That is a great, great question. And we need to find an answer. All right, Moors, I really enjoyed myself today. Again, talking to you all. And each week I'll bring new topics of information, but everything relates back to our holy and divine prophet, no doubt, and the work that he wanted us to do and the work that we need to continue to do, the work for ourselves and the work for each other. It is so vitally important that we take on the work. And thank you so much for that comment. That was Miss Jazzy 1960 that put that there. All right. And I just appreciate everyone who typed in the chat today and who came on this call. And I promise you all, I will send out the email next week. I just got really busy and it just slipped my mind, but I will do better. All right. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other. Peace, Morris.